Anna Gale, Andy Grisefa, Lisa Havey, John Kuhn, Mark McDermott, Jill Vergara, Karen Wackerman, Cameron Chiniski, Hank Ferentz, Jim Myers, Nick Maraboli, Christine Brown, Drew Georgiadis, Margaret Horton, Kelly Cinto,
Here.
Ken Estorita, Peter Britton, Brooke Sparacino, Story Tallman.
Melissa Longo, District 1 is here.
Joe Siebert,
District 3 is here.
Joe Siebert, District 5 is here.
Jennifer Barahona, District 5 is here.
Amy Ruggiero, District 1 is here.
Marty Fury, District 1 is here.
Okay, thank you. Let's all please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 2 on our agenda tonight, to consider and act upon the minutes of the special meeting held on August 21st, 2023, and the regular meeting held on August 28th, 2023. Can I get a motion to approve? Representative Woke, seconded by Representative Lambert. Are there any comments, changes? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Items number 3 and 4, update on Penfield Pavilion construction, remediation, insurance, and update on VERUP, including job descriptions. Unfortunately, I'm disappointed that nobody from the administration could be here to join us tonight. I don't know if anybody has any comments about these items. Representative Zesma?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Liz Zesma, District 4. So I would like to address both of these items respectively. Number 3 is a Penfield Pavilion construction, remediation, and insurance update. And item number 4 is an update on VERUP, which is the voluntary early retirement program that was voted into effect in 2021, I believe. So this is, I do want to clarify for the tax-paying public that those called before us have now, for the second time in as many months, been prevented from doing so by the administration. And I do want to read these comments into the record, Betsy. I'm sorry I skipped that part, and I will provide a backup. So backup for tonight's meeting, as well as comments in the First Select Women's newsletter Friday, September 15th, contain inaccuracies and/or a misunderstanding of how our government structure works under the current charter and the RTM rules to regulate. I would direct everyone's attention, including those in this body, to 2 letters in the August 28th backup, one from me and one from Representative Gerber, which explain how the executive branch is failing to provide promised and, in fact, required transparency to this body on critical issues involving millions of taxpayer dollars. With respect to item 3, which is Penfield Pavilion, there are no updates to be found on the town website about Penfield, and the link to the last Board of Selectmen meeting is actually broken. In previous meetings, it was communicated that bids were due in August, construction was supposed to start in September. Construction insurance was a huge uncertainty, not only in terms of cost, but in terms of allowing the project to move forward in accordance with our obligations to FEMA. The RTM voted for this project in good faith and asked for a conversation to help inform the public about the status of these issues and the concerns that went along with those. The administration has refused to respond. Instead, the First Select Woman suggests closed-door private conversations which mask facts from the public, and this is but one example. In particular, it is forbidden to use a constituent service such as a newsletter in lieu of the powers or permissible business of this or any other elected body. It is in no way to be construed as official town business or a substitute thereof. It is, in fact, a one-way communication which does not afford the opportunity to question anything. We are a legislative body elected by our constituents. By refusing to work with us, the First Select Woman is refusing to fulfill her responsibilities. We represent all 62,000 residents of this town. Anytime we are denied access to the administration, it is in effect silencing your voice.
Thank you. Representative Zesma, Representative Bateson.
Ed Bateson, District 1. As usual, I take exception to everything that was just said. I don't see, wow, you can tell it's an election year. There is no, I don't see any refusal. You asked for an update, you got an update. I mean, we don't have subpoena power. You can't ask somebody, demand somebody to appear and go back and forth. And quite frankly, with Penfield, I don't see anything happening yet. As far as I know, we're just starting to mobilize this project as of now. When it comes to VRIP, I know that sometime in August, I saw an email where everyone was invited to come in and discuss this with Jared. Did anybody take him up on that offer? Bill. So, did you get your update? Well, I don't see what the process is here tonight. And to accuse the first selectwoman of refusing to comply with this body, that's an insult. You got to stop the electioneering at these meetings, people.
Thank you, Representative Bates and Representative McCormick.
Karen McCormick, District 2. I also take exception to the comments by the majority leader. I have a copy of the rules to regulate in front of me, and I don't see anywhere where it calls for subpoena power pursuant to Mr. Bateson's comments. We asked for an update that was supplied to us. And I just find it interesting that we're coming here casting aspersions on an administration that has complied with what was asked of them. And for all those reasons, I just want to put on the record that I think it's unbelievable that we have people coming before this body tonight and politicizing something that doesn't need to be done.
Thank you, Representative McCormick. Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 2. I just want to add as well my thoughts on this. I think there's been no indication ever of the first select woman wanting to evade or not be transparent. In fact, she said all she wants to do is be transparent. She's been providing updates, yes, in the newsletter. She's been providing updates at the Board of Select meetings. In fact, Tom Bremer just did an update at the last meeting on Penfield. She has invited anybody and everybody to come in and talk to her, ask her questions, and she set an update for this meeting on both. I don't understand the problem here. She gave an update, and update's on the agenda. She updated it. What's the issue? I don't understand, but I think this is a little odd that it's being interrogated this way.
Thank you, Representative Steele. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Usually we have an opportunity at committee meetings with members of the administration or whoever we're asking present, so we can ask them questions, get answers, and then follow up for a meeting like tonight. Since we didn't have the committee meeting and the administration is not present, I'd like to read into the record an email I received from Becky Bunnell. She's a member of the Fairfield Beach Residents Association, of which I'm also a member. And she has a question, information about the flood and erosion control. It says, hi, RTM 9 members. I would like to request that in addition to the questions you will have for the RTM meeting tonight, in the Penfield Pavilion update part of the meeting, can one of you ask why the Penfield Resilience Study is taking so long to get off the ground? The background is that in February, the Board of Selectmen approved a separate $100,000 study to explore the resilience options for the Penfield site, now that we are lowering the grade by over 2 feet. The Flood and Erosion Commission Board has been requesting that the town move this forward quickly since April, and we are feeling a notable lack of urgency from the town. Despite requests for the status updates almost every 2 weeks, we finally got information that a request for proposal had been sent out in late June, and we're invited to to a revised scope meeting in mid-July. In that meeting, they said they could not start the council model work until September, but it is now mid-September, and I still have not seen a revised proposal from the coastal engineering firm RACE. She goes on to say, it is incredibly frustrating to see the lack of urgency for what in my mind is a critical study, and one that cannot help but wonder if there is some unknown reason why it's taking so long to just get the study started. Anyway, that is from Becky Bonnell, and I wanted it read into the record. Betsy, do you want me to send you a copy of this? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Representative Gerber.
District 2, I should set the record straight with what I said to Representative Bateson. I did not want to go and meet with Jared Schmidt, the CFO. He offered to meet with me at a meeting, and I responded, I just want you to go through the presentation that you used for us to approve the VRIP. There's multiple bullet points in there, things that you represented you were going to do, including reduce headcount in town hall. So I want you to go through those and against each one, just tell us the status of where we are. And then he responded by sending me another email saying, come meet with me. And I said, I'm not interested in coming to meet with you. I want an update with numbers against each of the bullet points in your presentation. So, this isn't a private matter, it's really a public matter. I voted for it and passed. And we just wanted an update. It's not really complicated. There's a lot of representations in their presentation, including, the type of updates to the files they're going to do, the types of processes they're going to put in place, the types of job descriptions that they're going to update. Not new jobs, but old jobs, and the amount of savings they're supposed to get. And we've never really been updated on that. We got an update a few months later with a lot of jobs that hadn't been filled yet, so it showed a reduction in staff. But subsequently, the employment headcount has gone up substantially. So we will do an update. And more than believe, we are doing an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gerber. Representative Carson.
Over 4. I did gating you. I am holding it. Can you hear me now? I just believe, just like we normally do, unfortunately, it's an election year, so it's going to be seen as political. We're just doing our job, our duty, just to follow up. We still haven't gotten a straight answer. Did we secure insurance for this project? I don't know. I think maybe Tom Bever tried to address it at a Board of Selectmen meeting, but it was very hard to follow. It wasn't, so we have questions. We are not making it political. You want to call it out because it's an election year, which this is, to us, it's the same as last year, the year before. We're just doing our duty. So I appreciate the fact that our caucus leader Liz just brought it up, that we would like to some answers, not political. Just, if you feel, why not just tell us the answers? And we don't, we asked for, the bids were supposed to come in by August. We haven't gotten information on that. So we're just doing our duty. I just feel that, please stop saying we're trying to act political because it's an election year. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carson. Representative Astorita.
Ken Astorita, District 10. I do want to say I want to congratulate this body. I really do, and I mean that sincerely. I'm overwhelmed when I see everybody here asking all these questions and wanting to get all this information.
the only thing that pops into my mind, did anybody in this body ask the question a few years ago of the previous administration? Hey, are you following the FEMA guidelines on your reconstruction of Penfield? I mean, anybody who was here at the time, did anybody ask that question? And that's why we're here now. And well, the answer was yes. So they lied to you. So I'd like the tax-paying citizens of this town to understand that the previous administration lied to this body based on what I'm hearing from some of the members and has cost the taxpayers of this town, what's the number, in excess of about $40 million to clean up Penfield and the fill pond and all that stuff? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Astorita. Representative Horton?
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 9, now 10, I guess. Actually, it's to Representative Astorita's point. It's exactly why we need to ask more questions. Excuse me, because we never want that kind of a situation to happen again. So we need to keep asking questions and hope that the administration will agree that that's, you know, in the best interest of the town to have ultimate transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Horton. Representative Zesman.
Liz Esmo, District 4. So Representative Astorita, I was on the Board of Finance at the time. I think you are being grossly misled about a lie being told about FEMA. It was a debate with the building committee about whether or not we needed to follow their guidelines or what the engineer suggested, as well as the building committee. But I will echo what Representative Horton is saying. Everything that happened before this administration promised to clean it up and improve. Nearly every system that may have led to it has not happened. The other thing I would like to mention is, Mark, or Mr. Moderator, I'm getting messages from members of the public who say that some of these addresses from this podium are not audible to the public. So I don't know if we can ask FairTV to check their equipment.
Which podium? Yours? That one?
Yeah, this microphone.
Was it just Representative Carson and wasn't holding the?
It was most of Representative Gerber's statement.
No, please not.
All right, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you all. Seeing none, we're going to move to item 5. To hear, consider for the first time a safe and livable streets ordinance sponsored by, do I have a second? Representative Wackerman, thank you. Representative Gerber, you'll be giving the presentation, please.
Gonna have to balance. We'll go to District 2. Going to be reviewing the Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance tonight. I hope everyone's familiar with the term complete streets by now. The draft ordinance has been posted on the town website since July 21st. Complete streets is a widely used term that everyone should get to know. It's very important. Smart Growth America is a not-for-profit consortium. It has a pretty good definition. Complete Streets is an approach to planning, designing, building, operating, and maintaining streets that enables safe access for all people who need to use them, including pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders of all ages and abilities. And please note the word streets is really right of way. It includes sidewalks. In too many areas of Fairfield, our streets are not safe enough to walk, bike, or even drive on. They're not up to the standards of a modern, forward-thinking municipality, with so many children, seniors, and parents now spending more time working from home. The fast clip of development makes a more aggressive approach to addressing street safety that much more urgent. I'm not a street safety expert. There are people with master's degrees and PhDs, probably some here tonight. Years of experience in this area in landscape architecture and engineering. The Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance stems from years of living in Fairfield, nearly 10 years as a member of the RTM, participating in the town's processes to try to get traffic calming measures in place, talking to residents, working with bikers and walkers, and hearing the frustrations with the process. This RTM body received an email from Villa Avenue area residents on July 28, 2022. I responded and began working with that group and with advocates across town. By September, it became obvious to me that the policies and plans in place were not enough, that we needed an ordinance. This ordinance is a result of collaboration with and review by two former members of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee who co-wrote the Complete Streets policy, one who is a landscape architect whose practice involves safe street infrastructure, a former chair of the Bike Ped Committee, a new member of the Bike Ped Committee, several Safe Streets advocates, including one architect who deals with Safe Streets implementation, two professional traffic planners, and a municipal attorney. This ordinance draws heavily on the work that has been done by the Bike and Pedestrian Committee members over the years, work that required substantial coordination with many town departments at the time, including police, engineering, DPW, etc. That work resulted in the town's Complete Streets policy and Bike Ped master plan. These were endorsed by the Board of Selectmen, but not required. They have not been followed. As a co-author of the Complete Streets policy has said, we were recognized nationally for our policy 6 years ago and have substantially fallen behind other towns in implementation. And this has implications for your ability to get grants. There is a revised draft of the Bike Ped Master Plan posted in March 2023. On page 6, it states, the purpose of this Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan is to inspire all levels of town government to work towards achieving a more bikeable and walkable community, to enrich the plan of conservation and development with an overarching Complete Streets policy, and to provide specific recommendations on how to achieve the Complete Streets policy goals and objectives. Inspire, not require. We need something more concrete than inspire. So I'm going to address the 7 major points of this ordinance. Number 1, it's an ordinance, not a plan. An ordinance is a law. Several municipalities in Connecticut have Complete Streets ordinances and design guides. Policies are fine if they are mandatory, like West Hartford's. Ours is not. This ordinance is in step with the draft POCD as well. It requires a highly qualified, trained point person, referred to as the Complete Streets Coordinator, to be the unambiguous point of contact on street safety issues for residents and other departments. The Bike Ped Master Plan Engineering Update, March 27, 2023, page 6, calls for assignment of a town bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. Complete Streets Coordinator, as envisioned in this ordinance, will be a step up in commitment to that role, but that role is recommended already. It requires Fairfield to have a design manual. Many municipalities in Connecticut now have street design manuals. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It requires every street improvement project from major reconstruction, referred to as 4R projects, to repaving, referred to as 3R projects, to include consideration of street safety improvements by the Complete Streets Coordinator. Complete street safety improvements can range from very inexpensive to expensive, depending on the need and within the scope of what is recommended within Fairfield's right-of-way design manual. Exemptions. Some street improvement projects may be exempt, but engineering will have to follow a process to get an exemption and get approval. And that exemption must, the revised bike ped master plan on page 7 talks about exemptions. Exemptions from the Complete Streets policy shall be determined upon the completion of a detailed planning and engineering analysis that documents the costs and constraints, indicating the basis for the decision not to comply with the Complete Streets policy. This ordinance requires this documentation to be approved as an exemption. So I met with the chief of police and two of his officers in the traffic safety unit, with the chairman of the police commission, and with the town engineer. And they asked that they felt there was some redundancy in this draft that included approval of exemptions by the bike ped committee. And they told me that, you know, even small projects have to be approved by the police commission, so that they prefer not to have that extra step. So what I'm thinking is I'd be amenable to transferring the approval from the approval of exemptions from the bike ped committee to the police commission, because they're making these calls anyway. Okay, number 6, we will have an annual Complete Streets plan that is approved with a budget with what is expected to be achieved in that fiscal year and how that fits into the master plan. Residents should have full transparency into when the goals of the master plan will be achieved. Under the institutional recommendations of the revised bike ped master plan, number 2 on page 12, it states, encourage staff from each department to champion various sections of the plan and work collaboratively with other departments and the bike ped committee whenever possible. We don't believe encouragement will get the job done. This ordinance makes annual planning and managing against that plan a requirement. We will have annual reporting. In this ordinance actually is in line with the Complete Streets policy that requires annual reporting on what the town has achieved towards the plan and the town's performance metrics around safety. It's a major part of the Complete Streets policy that is not consistently carried out, if at all. And really, that's the overview. And should we open it up for Q&A?
Okay, any comments, questions from the body? Representative Astorita? You need to go here. Oh. You know what? Here.
Testing, does this work? No, doesn't. Hello, hello? It's very dangerous if you give me a...
I know you perform at the Ramada Inn this weekend, but let's go.
It's actually a Hilton. I'll be appearing at the Hilton. So, please get that straight.
Okay, thank you. No problem.
Ken Astorita, District 10. Bill, I have a bunch of questions, but I'll only ask a couple right now. So you started working on this last September? Is that?
Yes.
Do we have an estimate on what the costs to the town would be to bring us in compliance with everything with respect to Complete Streets?
I don't think we can estimate a cost, because really Complete Streets reviews really range from, rumble strips and fog lines to putting in traffic circles. What this really requires is a person to be on top of what is needed and making those recommendations. So, for example, you know, there was recent approval by the police commission to put rumble strips and fog lines in on Reading Road. That would have been something, had this law been in place, probably would have been part of a review when the last paving, job had been done. So it's kind of hard to tell. It really would depend a lot on, ultimately it would depend on what's best for the town and what, if it's, if there's a benefit that is in line with, the cost. I doubt we're going to be in a position to bankrupt the town with this. It's going to depend on what is reasonable.
Well, so this is my concern, because basically if you pass this ordinance, you're committing the town to an annual capital expenditure, because you're going to have that in the budget. You're going to hire this complete streets coordinator or whatever. But I think before you could even move forward on an ordinance like this, you need to give this body a better understanding of exactly what the costs are going to be to the town and to the taxpayers, particularly when you're looking at an environment where this town has major projects coming down the road, school renovations, a sewer system that needs to be upgraded. So all those things need to be taken into consideration when you're looking at committing the town to additional capital expenditures. Thank you.
Is that all your questions for now? Or okay, so I'd like to. First of all, I don't think we're going to be hiring anyone. We have engineers in place, just none of them are the complete streets coordinator. So that would be up to the town to designate one of their engineers or one of their qualified staff as a complete streets coordinator, but then be the point person. There hopefully would be significantly more activity that comes from this, but it's really requiring that person to do the analysis. So right now we've got a lot of paving going on, and only certain projects are looked at and reviewed by a department that doesn't have this focus that we're proposing here. So I guess it's fair to assume that if someone is actually doing those reviews as part of the paving plan, that they would then have more ideas about what should be done. But there's also the offsetting costs of safety, liability, potentially death, that, I'm not sure how you would do those calculations. So it comes down to sort of a reasonable approach to safety. There are several towns in Connecticut that are on top of this and are really proactive in this. And I don't see them going bankrupt, with these types of expenditures. What they're doing is they're taking a disciplined approach where there formerly wasn't really a disciplined approach to reviewing street safety. I think it's also a value judgment. What's more important, the capital outlay, which I would hope there would be additional capital outlay. It's also making capital decisions. Would you rebuild Penfield? Or, if you know that $11.5 million would get you, 20 miles of sidewalks, what decision would you make? We didn't have those numbers in front of us. We don't really have the ability to make those decisions. We don't have that discipline in this town. So, really it's creating the discipline, in my opinion.
Any other questions, comments? Representative Rickford, Representative McCormick.
Karen McCormick, District 2. I guess my first comment in response to Mr. Gerber's answer to the question was, I don't think this body has ever approved of anything without knowing the cost. And we don't use the standard of, if it won't bankrupt the town, then we can just rubber stamp it and approve it. So I'm very concerned about the cost here. Obviously, we're not going to know the ultimate cost of the things that the Complete Streets program might take on as projects, but we should have some sense of what the cost would be. And to just say we don't know and it's not going to bankrupt the town, I think is irresponsible. Number two, I think I got an email, I'm sure everybody else did, which I think the title of the email was something like, I support safe streets in Fairfield. I think I can speak probably for everybody here, even members of the majority caucus, that we all support safe streets in Fairfield. None of us want to see tragedies happen that have happened, and I think we can all agree that safe streets is something that we all want to see in Fairfield. However, there is a process and procedure that we have to follow in order to make that happen. And the first question I have for Mr. Gerber is, as you indicated, you've been working on this ordinance behind closed doors since September of 2022. When was the first communication with the town attorney regarding the proposed ordinance?
I guess that would depend on whether he reads the backup for the RTM meetings. But I posted, this was posted July 21st, and I sent this to him just yesterday asking for his review. So if I can get his review within the next couple of weeks, I'll incorporate his comments.
Okay, so the response to the question is, other than the backup provided to the RTM, your first direct communication seeking input from the town attorney directly on this ordinance was yesterday?
Yes.
Thank you. Second question, when was the first time you had communication with the police commission regarding this ordinance that you've been working on since September of 2022?
I don't know the exact date. It was, within a few days after we voted this LNA, so probably 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, thank you.
Wait, when would that have been? 3 weeks ago?
2 to 3 weeks, I'll take your word for it. When was the first time you had communication with the engineering department of the town of Fairfield regarding this ordinance that you've been working on since September of 2022?
That would have been maybe 9 months ago or something. He was on a panel on safe streets, and we approached each other afterwards. I made some public comment at that meeting, and we discussed it.
When was the first time you presented him with a written copy of your proposed ordinance?
That would have been 3 weeks ago.
Thank you. And with respect to the Department of Public Works for the town of Fairfield, when have you consulted with them specifically on the ordinance here?
I have not consulted with them.
Okay, and in reading the ordinance, there does appear to be a fair amount that will fall upon the Department of Public Works in terms of the work that they're going to have to do, correct?
Well, they do this kind of work when they're told to, so they know what to do, but I hope there would be more of it if this comes about.
But your comment is, and your response is, that you have not yet to date consulted with the Department of Public Works.
No, I haven't. You mean with the interim?
With the Department of Public Works, I think.
I'm not sure who to consult with in that department, but I guess it would be the interim head. Okay, I'll send something to him. Yeah.
Well, the question is, have you yet? And the answer is no.
No.
Correct. Okay, thank you. And when was the first time that you presented a copy of your ordinance to the first select woman?
I have not. It was posted on the, the problem is with the first select woman is when I first came out with this, start talking about it, she was very derogatory towards it. So I didn't really think it was terribly helpful. She called it babble.
Okay, so the response is that you have yet to present directly to her your comments and thoughts about this.
No, I don't really need, if it's babble.
I'm just asking you the question, sir.
I'm just answering. She thought it was babble, so the answer is no. This isn't a court. I can answer the way I want to.
Well, yeah, but you do have to answer the question.
I answered the question.
Well, you finally did. Thank you. With respect to your comments on the rumble strips and fog lines, I think you indicated that those would be items that would be under the purview of this commission that you're proposing. Is that correct?
I'm not proposing a commission.
Did you read it? The Safe Streets.
Did you read it? I'm not proposing a commission.
Coordinator, the Safe Streets coordinator.
That's an employee of the engineering department.
Okay,
It's just somebody who's responsible for streets. There's no additional hires for this.
okay, and that person would be responsible for overseeing things like rumble strips and fog lines, correct?
That person would be responsible for doing a review of the paving plan to make sure that where appropriate, that we would incorporate street, well-known sort of practice, street safety improvements.
Including rumble strips and fog lines.
Whatever, I mean, I'm not a complete streets expert, but if it requires, if she were to come up or he were to come up with a recommendation that rumble strips and fog lines are appropriate on Reading Road or Street or Holmes Highway or any of those places, they would then be, incorporated into the paving plan.
Okay, and you're also aware, Mr. Gerber, that there is a provision of our rules to regulate that I'd like to read into the record. And it says, when so established by a higher body, no resolution or ordinance that conflicts with the laws of the nation, the state, or the town's charter shall become effective. Ordinances approved by this meeting shall be either be absent of conflict with existing ordinances or shall include repeal of the existing ordinance. This body may not alter the regulations of any other town body duly constituted under the town charter unless authorized by the charter or state statutes. You're aware of that rule to regulate?
Yeah, and, point out where this conflicts.
Okay, and you are aware that under Connecticut General Statutes 14-297, that the police commissioner for the town of Fairfield is the sole traffic authority in the town. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes, they're the LTR, yeah. LTA, I'm sorry.
Okay, and is the town attorney on WebEx?
Yes, I'm on. This is Jim Baldwin.
For the town attorney to make comment, Representative McCormick?
I'm asking if he's available so I can ask him a question.
You're asking through me to him.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Baldwin, you are present on the WebEx, correct?
I am here. Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Baldwin, do you have an opinion whether or not this Safe Streets ordinance would violate the rules to regulate number 19 of the RTM, and in that it conflicts with the police commission duties and authority authorized under both the town charter and Connecticut General Statutes 14-297?
Having just received the request for a review of the ordinance, I can only give you my first impression, which is yes, it would.
Yes, it would. What?
I believe it would, but that's upon my first review. Yes.
That it would conflict.
Yes, it would.
Thank you. No further questions.
May I respond? Attorney Baldwin, if you could point out exactly where it would conflict.
Since I was just provided with the request for a formal review from you, Mr. Gerber, yesterday, I would be remiss to give you a concrete answer at this time, which is why I qualified my remarks to Representative McCormick.
I would suggest to you maybe...
If I may finish, at first blush, since that is the so-called purview of the police commission, one would be hard pressed to think that the ordinance in its current form would not conflict with those provisions. I understand from your comments earlier that you are proposing language that would possibly fix that, but the ordinance which is currently before the body would, in my initial opinion, at first blush, conflict with that provision.
So I think I hear you, and the issue, the original issue was that I had put the authority to approve exemptions under the Bike Ped Committee because in the Bike Pedestrian Master Plan, It discussed that only major street calming infrastructure needed to be approved by the police commission, but I was subsequently told at a meeting with the chief that that's not the case, that all street calming infrastructure needs to be approved by the chief. And my reason, for wanting to meet with the chief really was to hash through those issues and make sure that nobody's authority was being, trampled on. So when he told me that, I was more than happy to move that authority, to the police commission. Once that happens, it's really essentially they are getting recommendations. It's really an engineering requirement where the engineering department will have to be involved in planning of paving projects and other projects and make sure that they are always involved in doing a review to make sure that we're not missing out on street safety projects. They are currently not consistently doing that. They are involved in certain projects, major projects, but when it comes to the annual paving plan, they should be deep into that. And by the time it gets to the police commission, they should have something to approve that includes every street and the possible street safety improvements. I want to make a comment on something Representative McCormick said. Everyone can be in favor of safe streets, but if you're not willing to do something about it, then I have very little in common with you, and I won't understand where you're coming from. We have an opportunity to do something to improve our street safety that is not necessarily expensive. It's a restructuring of the way we look at things. We are stuck in the past in this town the way we do street safety improvements. Now, if you don't believe that, if you out there talking to constituents and they're saying, we love the process, we think it's great, then vote against it. But that's not what I'm hearing at all. And I look around and I read what other towns are doing, and I think we're in the past. We are not a modern, forward-looking town when it comes to street safety. And there's some basic things that we can do, including, this is a very, very basic sort of low-cost starting point for street safety, and that is essentially to have somebody looking at it and owning it, which we don't currently have.
I think Representative Steele, you were next.
Jeff Steele, District 2. First of all, I love how we can propose new ideas. I think that is a great part of this body. Not only are we protecting the town and looking at finances and making sure we're not spending too much and we're approving correct spends, but we also can come up with good ideas and changes. And I think that's fantastic. It's a great part of this body. And we have put forward a number of ordinances this term as well as past terms, and they're thought-provoking and they're great that we bring them up, but they do take time. They take time, they take analysis, they take engagement, they take expertise from many different parties. So I say that because I'm glad this was brought up. I think the timing is short. 2 months is not a lot of time. And there are certainly elements of this I do support and parts of it. Maybe it is all of it. But it's not that we're discussing right now. It's the process. How do we get to that point? How do we get to that final point where we can implement everything? Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, maybe there's parts of it. And it's this process that I'm most concerned about. And I guess I have 2 questions about that. And anytime we bring up an ordinance or a new change, that is, I would first ask, as I did, and I remember even noise ordinance, why do we need this? What is the reason we need this? Is there a failing of the existing process? Maybe there is, maybe there's not. Or what can we do to improve? So those are 2 questions I would ask. And it sounds like we're looking forward. There are other towns that do this. Okay, great. But where are we failing in what we're doing now? What are the examples? How we failed? How have we not, I said policies in places, policies and plans in place are not enough. Mr. Gerber just said, and I just want to understand that a little better. Can we go deeper into why? So secondly is the process. It's the stakeholders. And if we're going to put something this involved in place, we just did this with the noise ordinance. Didn't we talk about this for a year and a half or so? I don't want to overstate how much time, but a lot of time. And I think 2 months to put something in place that's going to impact a lot. And when I say impact a lot, we're talking all the different entities that are involved here. We just mentioned several of them. I mean, from, I could read the list here, but yeah, what does this cost? What is this going to cost? Let's talk to, if not Board of Finance, the Finance Department. Police, we've talked, there's little discussion. There's fire, there's conservation, there's engineering. Department of Public Works, there's there's engineering, DPW, there's, I say, conservation, town attorney. I mean, there's so many different stakeholders in this. So while the end game and the end result may be fantastic, it could be, to do this in 2 months, it's the tide. There's just, to me, there's a lot of thought that needs to go in this, a lot of research, a lot of data. And I did hear Mr. Gerber just say, I'm not sure how to do the calculation. I'm not sure how to do the calculation of whether the cost is greater on the liability or on the spend. Okay, well, maybe we should do that calculation. That's fine. You don't know at this point. Well, let's do it. I would hope there is additional capital outlays, was said. I hope. Well, I hope too, but I don't know. So I just think there's a lot of things that need to be discussed and brought about. And just right now, great idea. The end game could be good for all of us. Who wouldn't want to drive around town with all this safety and all this? It sounds fantastic. But let's do it the right way, especially in ordinance where so much is involved and so many different stakeholders. I want to hear what everyone says. This may involve many months. What does the public say? So I just think we're trying to kind of jam it through a little too early. It's not fully baked, and there are many questions, and that's just my concern. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
May I respond? Yes. Yeah, thank you for your thoughtful comments. And when I said that, you can't really do the calculation, I mean, it involves putting a dollar amount on a life, on a limb. So it's a hard, I think it's an impossible, it's more of a value judgment in terms of, it's hard to put a value on the health and the community aspects of people being able to walk around town and greet each other, to be able to bike to school instead of being driven to school. These are things of value that I think if you were to do a full analysis, it would be difficult. The economic development, aspects of this, which there have been plenty of studies showing that, more bikeable, walkable town that's with interconnected paths spurs on economic development. But of course, whether that were to come about depends on other things like, what zoning is going to do. So there's a lot of variables in this. The one thing I would say is that the projects that are done may all be cheap. And the reason I don't think you can put a dollar amount on the projects is with the capital constraints we would have, the recommendations might be painting lines that were not considered before. And preferably, there would be more than that. But, it doesn't say what the Complete Streets coordinator, and that person's going to have a boss. I mean, that's the coordinator, but they're not the guru. I would imagine this is somebody working for Bill Hurley. So that point person is not going to be the be all and end all, but they're going to be making recommendations about what the right thing to do is. The process that we have right now, and I'll give you the example of Villa Avenue, which really got me into this. It wasn't the first time I was involved. I was involved in some stop sign requests, but with Villa Avenue, we got a call, and got an email, like this desperate email, we're going crazy, like we're trying to, we had a car, drive through a fence on the street. We had another car drive into a pole in the same street, like within a matter of months of each other. My daughter was going to school. She almost got run over, over and over. Like people in that neighborhood were complaining to the town. They had to go to the town with a request. They requested a stop sign. It went through the process. We want a stop sign. We want signage, and the stop sign was rejected. No one came out for maybe a year to walk through and say, you don't really want a stop sign here. And they actually eventually brought in someone from DOT at UConn, did a walkthrough and said, what you really want here is to bump out the sidewalk on this curve. That will substantially slow down the cars coming around. Nobody from this town ever mentioned that after, 18 months? It was an expert from DOT who mentioned that, and what the response was, it's not in the budget, we'll paint a line. I'm just really hopeful that if we had proper expertise and focus in Fairfield, that these things would be quicker. We'd avoid potentially some tragedy. And, with that kind of focus in-house, that the people of this town wouldn't feel like they're working for the town, that the town's actually working for them. And I think the feeling now with traffic is that people feel like they're inconveniencing other people when they're going to ask for street improvements.
Thank you. Representative Bateson, did you have something?
Ed Bates in District 1. Bill, in this presentation tonight, it seems like you're softening the approach on what I heard in LNA a couple weeks ago. I thought what I heard in LNA, there was some authoritative measures to what is in the proposed ordinance. And that kind of got my fur up, because then I see, when I watch the police commission meeting, I see that they're the traffic authority, designated traffic authority. I'm trying to run this thing out in my head, how this is actually going to work. And if this is something that this is going to be some sort of advisory panel, and that everything is if there's a proposal, it has to go through the police commission. I didn't see that in the ordinance. So I really think that the ordinance needs to be rewritten to reflect that. If that's what I think the town attorney's going to, that's what's going to have to happen. So I think that's going to need a rework. And quite frankly, I mean, this is a lot to ask to get it, for us to act on at the next meeting. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but, just a simple interview with a department head's not going to cut it. I want Bill Hurley here. I want to hear how he's going to integrate this, or who this point person is going to be, and how this is going to actually work within the current structure of our government. Because, I mean, we're not changing anything else except adding this ordinance. And to Baldwin's point, it has to work within the existing guidelines that are there. So next month, if you're really proceeding with this, I mean, there's a lot more people that need to be involved in up here presenting on this.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. Yeah, the police commission wasn't mentioned in the ordinance because they are the LTA, so they have to approve everything. This is everything, and like I said, a misinterpretation on my part of being able to layer on a exemption approval by the Bike Ped Committee, that I'm perfectly willing to just put that back with the police commission. So there should be no change to what the police commission approves, except my hope would be that with this process, with a person dedicated, to reviewing paving projects, that there would be a thicker packet during paving season for the police commission to approve, because the process now is a lot of streets get paved and this is an afterthought. So you're going back and putting things in retroactively. But So that's really why they weren't in there, because they are what they are. They're the ultimate authority on traffic. Yes, there will be changes in processes between engineering and DPW. If engineering has a required in reviewing the paving plans, that is a process change. DPW may have to hold up if that review's not done. They may have to wait until that review's done. So yes, I agree. We can hear what they have to say, but my view is, if we're going to do this right, they're just going to have to do it. I mean, we want our streets to be safe, and you look outside of Fairfield and you hear what other towns are doing and what they're getting money to do from the state and from the federal government, and you see that we are not doing it to that extent. Then it's going to be awkward for me to go and sit down with people in these departments and convince them that they have to do it. I think they just have to do it. So, I mean, lives depend on it, in my opinion. So, I mean, we've just had too many issues. We know a lot of people don't like to walk. They don't like to bike. Those are issues as well, not just the accidents. So I hear you, Ed, Representative Bates, and I hear your concern, but this isn't a radical shift that involves authorities. It's more of a process change.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I just want to speak in support of this ordinance. My experience on the RTM, and one reason I'm on the RTM is that when I didn't have time and I was raising my 4 kids, other people stood up and participated in this volunteer organization, and I was very grateful. And since I've joined the RTM, I have sort of been the District 9 Complete Streets representative, seemingly. People reach out to me, and I've got a lot of things done, but it's very haphazard. If I didn't have the time, I've gotten a stop sign on South Benson. I've got a 4-way stop and a crosswalk on Beach Road, right near the Colonial graveyard, where people used to speed and drive through the neighbor's fence once every 5 years. That's not going on anymore because I took the time. I knocked on every single door. I got the petition. I went to the police commission. I got the neighbors to show up. Another thing I did, 2 neighbors approached me about a safety fence around the Sherman Playground. They were not making progress. I worked with them. We got that approved. It took me 2 years to get the money from the town to put the fence up because the Park and Rec were putting little kids there, 2nd graders, 3rd graders, 4th graders that run out into the street. They can't run out in the street anymore. One other thing that I just accomplished, again, a woman was hit by a car on the Old Post Road by First Church, and by Operation Hope Town Hall, St. Paul's Nursery School. The First Church has a Montessori. A constituent reached out to me. Her kids were at St. Paul's, and I knocked on every door. I got the petition signed. I went in front of the police commission. I got it approved, and we have flashing stanchions there. That took 2 years. Okay, this is very haphazard. I'm happy to have gotten them done. I'm happy to have gotten them done for my district, but I have the time. Like, it shouldn't be haphazard. This needs to be in a safe streets ordinance. It needs to be something people are taught about at town hall so they can incorporate it, and we don't have to back into these things. These save lives. Thank you very much, and I support this bill. Thank you very much for all your hard work. I appreciate it as a resident of District 9. Thank you.
Can I just respond to that real quick?
Sure.
So thank you for all of that, Representative Georgiadis. And I think, the amount of time and energy you had to put into getting those stop signs kind of speaks to another issue. Is there are areas of town where people don't have the luxury of time. They might be working 2 jobs, and it's difficult to get that sort of time available to learn. I mean, learn about stop signs, learn about street improvement, infrastructure, go fight the battles with the police commission and all that. So to the extent that we have a point person who actually is proactive about these things, that actually maybe driving around and looking at unsafe places and measuring unsafe places with data, proactively, and then taking care of these things before they'll become problems. That's really a customer service oriented town. And I think that's where we should be moving towards.
Thank you. Ken, you spoke already. Representative Mirabile? You'll get up again. Just let someone else. Good. Perfect.
It's probably District 8. Fairly new to this board, so doing a lot of listening the last couple meetings. And, I do love the idea of this ordinance. I mean, everybody would, just the title of it, Safer Streets. We all want safer streets. And I agree too. I just don't know that this ordinance, the way it's written, is specific enough. And to say that we have a chance to do something isn't compelling enough either. We always have a chance to do something. We have a chance to do a million things. And to come up here and say, hey, we have a chance to put a pool in like Greenwich has, or we can put a hockey rink in. I would love to do those things. And I know that this is safety minded as opposed to leisure. But if I came up here and wrote an ordinance and said, hey, we have a chance to put a town pool in and let's vote on it next week, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And this is the same thing, except it's got safety in there. And when you bring up safety, it's very compelling and everybody wants to vote for that. And I do too. But without having a budget or having any idea of the specifics of this, to vote on it next week is crazy. We have to have folks come in here and talk about the feasibility of this. And just having a point person, that's great too. And having somebody proactive is great. But that's not what this ordinance is about. It's not just about a point person. I mean, we can't vote on something next week and say, I don't think it's going to bankrupt the town. I don't think it's going to be too expensive, when we really, really don't know. And I just feel uncomfortable listening to this, and having a lot of verbiage without a lot of facts makes me nervous. And it puts me in a position where next week I've got to vote yes or no on something that I have no idea what the impact is going to be on this town, no idea what this is going to cost this town over the next 12 months, 36 months, or 60 months, no idea what the citizens even think of this or whether it's wanted. It's just, it's too open-ended for me.
Thank you. Just to be clear, we wouldn't be voting on this till October 23rd, not next week.
May I respond, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
So I just want to highlight something that we didn't really talk a lot about how this was written. There are national organizations, Smart Growth America. There's the Department of Transportation. If you get a chance, please read some of the links on the in the appendix of this. These are not concepts that I just plucked out of thin air. These are based on best practices across the country. There's been a ton of thought in this, and I don't know if people have heard of Vision Zero, which is sort of a concept that we should be thinking about street safety in a way to at least a target of having no automobile deaths. This is something the state is very involved in. There are model ordinances which I drew off of. I didn't pen this from scratch. Also, we have a bike ped master plan and complete streets ordinance, which most of the things in here are already there. So the irony is those were supported by by all the departments in town. And I suppose you could say, well, if they knew it was endorsed and not required, they would sign anything, I guess. I don't know. But my impression is from talking to the people who wrote it, that they were all very enthusiastic about it. So these are things that theoretically we're supposed to be following, but we aren't. I think the people that wrote it reached out to so many people that there was consensus that this was the right thing to do. I just want to set the record straight that it's not, I didn't pen this from scratch. Thank you.
Representative Longo on WebEx.
Hi, thank you. Melissa Longo, District 1. I was just listening to what Representative Georgiadis had to say about all of the things that she's done for her community, including a fence by the school that took approximately 2 years. So if one fence around one school is going to take approximately 2 years to install or to move forward or to be completed, this seems like a much larger undertaking than a fence around a school. We're talking about the entire town. We're talking about different districts of our town, as Mr. Gerber was saying, about walkability, kids being able to bike to school. In certain areas of our town, that's just not possible. And that should be looked at. Every single district in our town, where our schools are, where our parks are, et cetera. It just seems like we all want safety, and that's not the issue. I would like to know, I have a lot of questions, and I would like to know more about this process before we vote on this next month. If a fence took 2 years, this process seems like we need to hear from the police, we need to hear some concrete facts so we can make an informed decision, especially with regards to budgeting. And for Mr. Gerber to say that he doesn't think that it's going to bankrupt the town, that's kind of not the point. The point is we need to know so we can work it into our budget appropriately, and we need to see what numbers that we're looking at, and to have we need all of the check marks with all of these things. And I think it's a good way to open up the conversation. I think it's great to get this out there on the table. And I think that bringing it up here on the floor is a great idea to spark us to ask these questions, because clearly there's just not a lot of information here. So I would like to hear from, some more people about exactly what we're doing here, because this is an ordinance we're talking about, and I would like to have more facts before this body makes an informed decision. And in another 5 weeks, I feel like it's rushed, and I would really welcome, and I think it would be a great, bipartisan situation for us to kind of as a body come together and say, yes, we have some more questions, and not to rush this thing through, and to have all the information we need as a body to decide. Because I think collectively as a whole, there's no one on this body that doesn't want a safer street, especially for our children, for our elderly. And there are definitely improvements that need to be made, but we need to take it step by step. And I don't think it's a bad thing to continue to ask questions and not rush something that's going to be a huge undertaking for our town, and most likely for our citizens who are paying taxes here. So thank you very much.
May I respond?
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that the word bipartisan is music to my ears. I think that would be wonderful to make this bipartisan. So thanks for saying that.
Representative Wilk.
Yeah, that's fine. Jay Walk, Representative Walk, District 5. Rome wasn't built in a day. So my point is on all this and what I've been listening to, Representative Steele and Representative Basin, I agree. It is a little fast. It is like it all of a sudden it just appeared on us and now we're going to vote on it right away. But it is a start. It's this whole thing that I'm listening to about taxpayers' money. I mean, I would think our residents here want this. I'll just give you a for instance of what transpired in my neighborhood. So I wasn't on the RTM at the time. I was president of my condominium, Dogwood Green. State representative in my neighborhood asked me to get involved because it's a community thing and Dogwood Green is part of the community and part of Stratfield community. I don't know if all of you are aware of this, but when you come down Fairfield Woods, people were doing 80, 90 miles down that hill. They were doing was when they go to take the turn onto Melville, where Stratfield School is, the curb was so in that I was nervous that one day something's going to happen. And matter of fact, a family did get hit crossing Fairfield Woods to go to Stratfield School. That's how this all started. So the state representative worked on this, and here's your point, for many, many years. It didn't happen overnight where that intersection got fixed, which everybody's probably aware of. The light, you couldn't see the light. It was an old light coming down Fairfield Woods where you hit Melville. People were running the light. I couldn't see it. And the light down at the end where you hit Stratfield Road was the same. So what Bill Hurley, our town engineer, promised, he jutted out the sidewalk. Now nobody's speeding around the curve anymore, and they put new lights and they made renovations. So here's my point again. So what Bill's trying to do, Representative Gerber's trying to do, is to make other intersections, other parts where Bill Hurley did for me when I asked him to put, I've been talking to Bill, I want everybody to know I've had discussions with Bill Hurley about putting in arrows at lights where traffic would flow easier, where somebody wouldn't try to go around somebody like it did to me. And I got hit right where Fairfield, where Firestone is, where you make the left to go to Pepe's, to Commerce. So when they were renovating, when they were doing the sidewalks and they were doing all the paving on Kings Highway, I asked Bill to put in an arrow there at that corner. That's why there's an arrow there. So anyway, I'll end it on this. I think, Bill, you've done a great job. I hope this gets passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara for District 7. This is not a new idea. That's the whole point for me. The bottom line is that this is codifying a policy that existed for a really long time in our town. I think that the first framework for this was established in 2012 or 2013, and then it was finally put into a real policy that was approved by many boards, unanimously approved with lots of stakeholders. The Board of Selectmen approved it. It went through engineering. It went through, I think even the police commission even looked at this. It was a lot of people. We got a national, that was finally approved in 2018. That's a really long time ago. It was a heavy lift for these people who got it approved. It was a great policy. It was nationally recognized. It put us on the map. We were spoken about nationwide. And then we just dropped the ball and we didn't implement it. That's why we need this. People came and moved to Fairfield because it was walkable at one point, and we've lost that. And this will help us get that back. And it's really important for economic development and health and safety issues. And It's just a codification of what already exists, what our town should be implementing right now. And they're not. And that's why we have to pass this.
Thank you, Representative Vergara. Anybody else besides Representative Astorita that hasn't spoken yet? All right, Representative Astorita.
Ken Astorita, District 10. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a couple of additional questions. I've heard a lot of great comments. First, actually, I apologize. I was remiss before Bill. I do thank you for your effort on putting together this ordinance. But sometimes there may be other ways to solve a problem than an ordinance. And one of my questions to try to understand exactly the problem that we're trying to solve is, do we have traffic safety statistics with respect to the town that would compare us to comparable towns to show us that our streets are unsafe or anything like that?
I think that can be pulled together. We could probably get that from, I would hope we can get that from the police, but there are traffic, for Fairfield, there's definitely traffic safety data. Some of it was in the draft plan of conservation and development. Actually, in that draft, there's a recommendation that the next step is to create a complete streets ordinance with a design manual, and it comes in the section, I think it's on page 53, and prior to that, I think in the section right before it, it has maps with dots of where all the accidents have happened.
Yeah, I think I did see that, but I think, and Mr. Moderator, maybe this is for you. Can we ask the police chief to put together some statistical analysis of traffic incidents?
You can certainly email me, and
I shall do that. I shall do that.
Thank you.
I had another question here. Now I'm drawing a blank on it. I guess that was not that important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Marty Fury here. I'm representative for District 1. Can I speak?
Yes, and if anybody else would like to speak that's on WebEx, please put your name in the chat box.
I just wanted to thank Representative Gerber. I actually support this ordinance. I think it's a great thing, and I understand the urgency of it. I live in Greenfield Hill, and there's a lot of people who walk, and kids who want to bike to each other's homes and everything. And it does seem like that Fairfield is a little behind the game compared to other towns. For example, if you look at Westport, it looks like they're doing it right. They have the stop signs where they need to be. They have the sidewalks where they should be. And I just feel like, especially in Greenfield Hill, I know that area because that's where I'm from. We need it, but I'm sure other parts of town also need it. And in light of the two people who just recently died, it does seem like we're ready. I think it could be a bipartisan thing, and I think the town needs to come together. And I think if you ask the majority of the people in the town, they would all be in support of safer streets or complete streets, as Representative Gerber was talking about. So good luck, and if you need any help from my end, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I will call you.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Representative Bateson?
Ed Bateson, District 1. Jill, when you said, the walkability of the town going down, I don't know what street you're driving on, but I can't even get across the post road with all the crosswalks and everything that's going on. So I think walkability is doing just fine in the town of Fairfield. Sorry, I got the microphone, guys. The second thing is, The second thing is when it comes to, when we're talking about how this is going to work, I don't want the general public to think that this is going to be some sort of magic bullet that is going to cure all the problems. I mean, I'm trying to walk the process through in my head of what's actually going to happen. And what's going to happen is if this safety coordinator recommends something to the police commission, it's still going to have to go through that process. So to Drew's point, if you want to get a crosswalk installed, it's still going to take that same amount of time for the police commission, the police department, the state of Connecticut, whoever else all these stakeholders are, to give an opinion on whether that can be done. So I don't want the general public to think that this is going to be a cure-all. And the last thing I'd like to say is, to the town attorney, I really think the opinion on whether this conflicts with other existing charter provisions or state laws is very important, because I just think there's a lot of things out here. And when I'm trying to integrate this ordinance into the town and its functionality, there's going to be some conflicts there. Thank you.
Thank you. And just the town attorney was asked yesterday for his opinion. So obviously that will be forthcoming.
May I respond?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. First of all, just to let people know, we wouldn't be the first ordinance in Connecticut. We'd be, I don't know, the 10th. I'm not sure. So this it's not like this is a new concept, which again, it was incorporated in our town's own plan of conservation and development. So obviously I'm not the only one that knows that. In terms of the process and the type of infrastructure, Ed, what was your question about that again? About how are we going to still have to go through the same process? Yeah, so the police commission is going to have to approve, but if we have a transparent design manual that's in the public domain, the hope would be that this becomes relatively routine, so that not every neighborhood is starting from first principles, which is the way it works right now. Really, you're starting from scratch and going to try to advocate, and then you're told that the stop sign really isn't the way to go, and then you got to go back. So hopefully the hope would be that this clarifies what can be done where, how, and the process becomes much more efficient. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative McCormick. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Representative McCabe first. You've already been up.
Representative McCabe, District 4. I just want to be quick with 2 points. The first one, as we were sitting here, I just did a quick Google search on pedestrian deaths and safety in the state of Connecticut. And again, this was literally within the time that this was being discussed. And it was reported that in 2022, there was a dramatic uptick across the country in the number of deaths that increased in several categories: daytime fatalities, motorcycle, bicyclists, pedestrian speeding, etc. And this article in the Connecticut Examiner, which I can send to all of you, is saying that Connecticut is following the trend, and that year there were 70 pedestrian fatalities, the most in 34 years. So I think it's pretty clear that this is something that we need. The second thing I want to say is what's wonderful about Complete Streets, as Bill was saying, and why I support this ordinance, is that it's about process. And what this means is that right now, whenever there is any kind of infrastructure project that is being considered, we think about what's good for the cars. You think about what's good for the cars, the walkers, the bicyclists, the people with strollers, the people in wheelchairs. You ask all the questions right from the start, so that by the time it gets to the police commission, it's already got it baked in, because you're asking the questions with every single project. It takes education and a person
to remind everybody. And honestly, I don't think it would even take that long for our very skilled staff to pick up on it. And that is going to be second nature, that these are the questions that are asked with every single project. Is it good for cars, for walkers, for bicyclists, for motorcyclists, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McKay. Representative Graceffa?
Good evening, Andrew Graceffa, representative from District 6. First, I want to thank Bill for the hard work and putting into this and giving me a chance to pipe in. I'm proud to co-sponsor this ordinance. As just by way of quick background, I am a former chair of the Fairfield Bike Walk Committee. And I just wanted to put three extra points sort of to this legislation. I don't want to repeat everything that the supporters have said. But one of the points that have been made is sort of responsible use of the taxpayers' money. But just to remember that not every user of Fairfield streets is a taxpayer. We have Fairfield residents. We have other residents that don't pay taxes. Children, all of our children that don't have a voice, a direct voice, that need to make streets safe for all users. Many of our streets, and I've lived here for 16 years, many of our streets, unfortunately, have become what's referred to as stroads, STROADS, which are roads that are meant to be streets, but are really where traffic moves at a high clip. And to the point that was brought up earlier about, do the residents want this? And how do we compare, with other towns? I would just ask the average citizen or resident of Fairfield if they feel safe walking in their general neighborhood, walking to a nearby shop, walking to a nearby store, and that ability should be for every resident. If they're in the vicinity, obviously some other residential neighborhoods don't have services within vicinity, but there should be a baseline expectation that our streets are safe for all users. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who has not spoken yet? Okay, Representative McCormick. And you're probably up for about 8 minutes before, so you only got about 2 minutes left.
I'll be done in about a minute,
Thank you.
I hope. I feel like I'm leaning over, so I'm going to move to the left. Karen McCormick, District 2. My encore performance, just kidding. I would like to point out that on page 6 of the proposed ordinance, it talks about the Complete Streets policy and Complete Streets plan shall be incorporated into the town's plan of conservation and development. And as one final question for Mr. Gerber, have you met with the conservation people or planning and zoning specifically on this proposed ordinance?
Yes, I had a couple hour meeting with Jim Wendt and Emmeline Harris, and their conclusion was that this does not impinge upon their authority at all. And we then talked about other stuff, but they don't see a problem with this really, and economic development as well. I did not meet with conservation.
Did you meet with the Planning and Zoning Commission or communicate with them directly on the ordinance?
No, I met with the department.
Okay, and just one final comment more than a question, and that is, I don't want anyone in the public to take my comments earlier as indicating that that we're somehow not supportive of efforts being made to make the streets in Fairfield safer. But we are charged with our duty as a body, as each member here, with diligently pursuing all of the questions that need to be asked to, number one, make sure that this is something that we can afford to do. And we have to know those numbers up front. And secondly, what the impacts are going to be on all of the departments, all of the commissions, how it's going to be affect the town charter and the various competing interests that exist here. We may all ultimately have the goal to have safe streets, but we need to do our job, and that's all we're doing here. So the public should know that just because we're not saying today that we're going to run in here in 5 weeks' time and put a rubber stamp of yes on this does not mean that we don't support safe streets and we're not willing to continue to have discussions. Should the answers not come to us in 5 weeks, we're not willing to continue to have those discussions to figure out a way to do things to make the streets safer. Thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Basically, one of the people I worked on this with said, I can't remember the saying. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing that. What is it again? Yeah, doing the same thing over and expecting a different outcome. So it's fine to say everyone wants safe streets, and it's fine to say coordinate with the people that are in charge of our streets, but it's not fine to say that what those people want to do and they want to keep doing the same thing is okay for safe streets if you believe that our streets aren't safe and that they're not doing the right things. So, I appreciate that you have to do more work, but there's a long reading list in the appendix of this ordinance. I think once you start digging in, and I would hope that everyone would, because this is one of the questions of our time here in this town. We've got development and we've got safe streets. We've got to act quickly on certain things in this town before it's too late. And I would hope that people put the time in to read these things, because I wasn't really aware of this stuff a year and a half ago. I was made aware of these things, and there's been so much work done and so many papers written and so many towns are moving on these things that these aren't new concepts. But I think here in Fairfield, there are many people that are not aware. We're in our echo chamber here. We think maybe we're doing all we can. We are not. And it wouldn't take you very long looking outside of Fairfield to know that, and just do the reading, and then let's come back. Hopefully we'll be talking about this again next month, and hopefully everyone's going to be up to speed on this, because this is really important. Thank you.
Representative Longo on WebEx.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Melissa Longo, District 1. Just listening to what Representative McCabe said about her recent Google search about the state, she didn't mention anything about Fairfield statistics specifically. And I would just like to remind this body and anybody that's listening in that we are talking about Fairfield. We are not talking about neighboring towns. We are not talking about anyone else in the state right now. We are talking about Fairfield. We are a very unique town of over 60,000 people. We cannot compare ourselves to Danbury or any other town. This is a very unique place to be. And to say that you just did a Google search while you're sitting here in a meeting about statistics with nothing specifically linked to Fairfield is just completely irrelevant. And if we're going to look at statistics, then this is another reason why we need more time, so we can look at statistics that are specific to Fairfield and not comparing us to any other town. And that to me is important. And we have our own unique needs and we have things that we have to fix here. So unless we're looking at a town that is very much mirrored to what our specific issues are, I don't even see the point of discussing that right now. And that's great that all these other towns are doing things, but we are not like them. And I hope that everyone sees that. I just think it also is another opportunity to bring up more questions and see, you know, again, just another reason why I support having a little bit more time so we can work on this. Thank you.
May I respond?
Yeah, it's funny how we want to compare ourselves to other towns sometimes, but not all the time.
But I think that there is something worth, and I appreciate that, like we are different. But I would also like to point out that the statistics that we're going to be asking for in the Complete Streets policy are required to be reported every year, and they are not. Okay, so one of the issues we have is no one takes this policy seriously. But if they did, we would have those statistics to talk about right now, and that's part of the frustration. Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Moderator, can I ask Representative Gerber a question?
Zesma. I don't know who's. Okay, hold on. You spoke already. Representative Barahona, please, on WebEx.
Thanks,
Representative
Mr. Moderator.
Barahona
Can you
has
hear
not
me?
spoken yet, Mr. Steele. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Mr. Moderator, can
We
you hear
can
me?
hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell. I just wanted to respond to Representative Longo's comments. You know, certainly Representative McCabe made it clear that this was a, you know, not a scientifically based research project, that she sat here and sat and did a quick search. But let's be clear, there have been 4 pedestrian deaths in the last 3 years in our town. I mean, give me a break. That's just outrageous that we're talking about statistics that are irrelevant to our town. And I was one of those working mothers who tried to get a stop sign, to try to do speed enforcement that Representative Georgiadis was talking about earlier. I'm offended by that comment. And I see near deaths near my neighborhood every day. 0 sidewalks, kids walking to McKinley, kids walking to Ward. How many deaths are too many in our town? Because I think 4 is plenty.
Thank you. Representative Zesma.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Liz Esmond, District 4. I just want to echo something Representative Barahona said. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I was almost hit by a speeding car taking a right, an illegal right, onto Fairfield Woods from 59. Maybe to the delight of some people, if that had happened, I wouldn't be here. But what I want to, address this to the public. So the way the process works here is, as the majority party, we bring forth ordinances, and it is my practice 100% of the time to invite Republicans to co-sponsor, and in some cases they have, and in a few cases they have not. This is very similar to the noise ordinance. So I appreciate all the questions and the concerns. However, now is the time to work together. So it's not too late to co-sponsor. Actually do the work. And I appreciate Representative Fury's comments, and I'm going to invite you right now to become a co-sponsor of this ordinance. And I appreciate your support. And I also just want to say, Bill, this is, really tremendous leadership on your part. And, we need vision. This is not a 2-horse, 1-horse town. We need something besides reacting to everything that's happening, failing to get things done, letting us stagnate in any way. And thank you for what you're doing. I fully support this ordinance, and I hope that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will do the same.
Thank you, Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 2. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm a biker. I love biking around town. I bike Reading Road all the time. I am scared every time I bike Reading Road, I'll be honest. Again, it's not about what we're trying to do here. I think we've heard a lot of stories about why this needs to get done, and I think it's less about that than just the process. So okay, if that's what we want to get done, let's just do it the right way. There's rules to regulate for the RTM. There's a charter for the town. There's Robert's Rules of Order to follow for procedure. So let's do the same with this, but let's engage the right people who need to be engaged. And that's a number of departments. I mean, I'd like to hear Bill Hurley come up here and so we can ask him questions. How does it impact him? How does it impact the police department? A lot of these questions are still coming up. So let's just get through them methodically. If we work together in a bipartisan way, yes, that would be great. But we can also work together just as a body. Let's go through this meticulously because it is going to impact the whole town. Let's do it the right way. We want to know costs. We want to know everything else. So it's just that simple. We're trying to just rush this through. I mean, yes, there's an election coming up, but we're trying to rush this through. Let's do this the right way. Ordinances of this great of impact shouldn't be rushed through in a month and a half. So again, it's not about the end result. It's not what we're trying to do. There's a lot of things we need to fix. I agree. So let's do it the right way. Let's do it through a process where we get the right departments engaged. I want to hear what they all have to say. And I would think all of you want to hear what they have to say too.
Thank you. The body done? Great. All right, I'll have public comment now. Name, address, 2 minutes to talk, please. Whoever wants to go first, don't all look at each other.
Can you hear me? Good evening. Thanks everybody. First of all, for your public service. I know, my name is Jeff Randolph, 20 Cedar Woods Lane, Fairfield. Thank you all for your public service. I know you probably have better things to do, but I know we all care about this town. My wife and I have lived in the Stratfield neighborhood with my family since 1995, where we raised our 2 children. I'm a registered architect, trained as an urban designer, former corporate real estate executive, and currently a managing partner for a commercial real estate development company that builds warehouses in Pennsylvania. I work regularly with licensed traffic engineers, and I have a high degree of familiarity with traffic design issues. As a regular cyclist and a pedestrian in Fairfield, I do ride my bike on Reading Road, and I was almost killed there. Who was right? Oh, you, yeah. Almost killed there. I walk and ride in the town streets on average twice a day. I was going to wear my orange hat, my hunting hat, because that's the only way I really feel safe, but I didn't. I'm here to encourage you to pass the Safe Streets Ordinance, which will make Fairfield a safer place, promote environmental sustainability, and improve our property values. Unfortunately, Fairfield's roads were not designed with pedestrians or cyclists in mind. This shortcoming has led to needless dangers and has resulted in more than 3 fatalities. I think that statistic's enough. 3 people have died. The statistic is 0. We have had 3 people die. That's enough of a reason. It also limits the enjoyment of our town and keeps us locked in outdated planning practices from the 1950s. The issue we face is not unique to Fairfield. In fact, the U.S. Department of Transportation has allocated $5 billion, $5 billion for the Safe Streets and Roads grant program. It's Bill SS4A to fund the design and implementation of pedestrian and bicycle safety infrastructure improvements across the country. Who was concerned about money here? Raise your hand. Oh, okay. there's a handout that's from the federal government showing where we can get the money. The bill SS4A is to fund the design and implementation of pedestrian bicycle safety infrastructure across the country. To be considered for these funds, Fairfield needs to demonstrate two things. One, executive sponsorship and a comprehensive plan. Unfortunately, right now we have neither. We're not going to get any money until we have some sponsorship here. Our first select person has expressed skepticism about these programs, effectively eliminating Fairfield from consideration of any of the $5 billion. The response so far has been to focus on repairing cracked sidewalks, which is important, but it's not going to lead to any meaningful improvements. The issue is not simply about repair and maintenance, it's about redesigning our roadways to meet nationally recognized standards and seizing a limited opportunity to win significant funding for roadway, pedestrian, and bicycle safety improvements. Westport, we say we're different, but a lot of the town is similar to Westport. It's a more affluent and clearly a savvier town that's half our size. They've secured $550,000. We got zero because we have no sponsorship.
Jeff, if you can wrap it up there,
yeah,
please.
I'm almost done.
Thank you.
Largely because our first select person in the RTM haven't committed to any program. The gating issue for Fairfield being considered for any of the US DOT Safe Streets $5 billion is the RTM sponsorship and submission of a formal plan that meets the DOT's criteria. The Complete Street Ordinance gets us started and outlines steps to submit a plan to the National Complete Streets Coalition and receive a score. Currently, we have a grade of 0 and will likely be rejected for any future consideration. In the name of Marla Lady Morello, Megan Ravis, Christine McMahon, who are all needlessly killed by cars in our town, I implore the RTM to set aside partisan differences and act in a timely manner to pass this ordinance. The longer the RTM waits, the more likely someone else will be killed and less likely Fairfield will have access to the funding to address these serious issues.
Thank you. Next. Name and address, please. You press that button that says push.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Roy. I live at 3 Buena Vista Road. This is very tall for me. Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm here to voice my support and urge every RTM member to support the Complete Streets Ordinance. My interest in road safety issues started the first week we moved to Fairfield over 7 years ago. Bored with unpacking, I suggested to our 6-year-old son that we go for a bike ride in our new neighborhood. As we left the driveway, Ben was nearly hit by a speeding car. Horns blared, I was yelling, and my son was scared to his core. I almost lost my only child that day, and I've been an advocate for more human-centered approaches to transportation ever since. The Complete Streets Ordinance will help us treat road safety like the public health crisis it very much is, and is not being addressed as such by our current systems. I've heard excuses from town elected leaders and staff as to why Fairfield either can't have or is hesitant to embrace the current Complete Street standards of the Federal Highway Administration and the Department of Transportation. The top being our roads were built decades ago when we had far fewer residents, and we must follow the MUTCD because it's the law set forth by the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and much of what we do to roads and towns must be approved by them. Perhaps our roads are older and not designed to meet the needs and lived experiences of residents in 2023, but guess what? Our current procedures for improving the situation are equally outdated, thus making the process to improve them unnecessarily slower, cumbersome, and confusing to the average person who's just asking the town to help them slow down drivers so they don't have to worry that their kid might die trying to walk to school. Further, last month, the Connecticut DOT announced the new Complete Streets design criteria to be incorporated into all projects on state-controlled roads, ensuring a focus on pedestrian and bicycle facilities and public transportation to improve safety and connectivity. If keeping in alignment with the CT DOT's policies and procedures is vitally important, it stands to reason that we ought to follow in their footsteps on this path as well. Communities throughout Connecticut, including Westport, Norwalk, Wethersfield, New Britain, and others, are far ahead of us in terms of following the Connecticut DOT's path and planning and implementing complete streets infrastructure that makes their streets more safe and economically prosperous. We can have this too, but we need the tools to get us there, and right now we do not have them. At the September 13th Police Commission meeting, Chief Calamaris claimed that driver behavior was a primary factor in making our roads dangerous. That is not the whole story. If we want to change how people behave, we have to change their environment. No engineer or policymaker doing innovative work in 2023 embraces the outdated and debunked belief that progress can come from individuals changing their behavior alone. Our transportation system needs to be altered to reduce the overall risk people face when using it. In the words of David Ederer, who has a PhD in transportation system engineering, we don't ask everyone to filter their water at their home. We build it into the system. Please help Fairfield build a safer, more livable, and equitable system of transportation by supporting the Complete Streets Ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next.
Sarah Mason, 15 Fife Road. I'm here tonight to support the Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance. I'm a mother to 3 children, age 7 and under. We are active walkers and bikers in our neighborhood. We are walkers to Riverfield School currently, and will also walk to middle and high school. I've been working with the town on traffic calming and safety improvements on Mill Plain Road since March 2022. I've made very little progress, and that is in part because I'm working in a broken system. I first went in front of the Police Commission on September 14th, 2022. Without going into all of the details, I followed the process. I completed a road audit with our town engineer, collected my signatures, 80, could have gotten more, for the improvements on Mill Plain that I believed were supported by our engineer as a result of our walk, only to have my petition denied. There was agreement in the room that speeding is an issue on Mill Plain Road. A lot of excuses for inaction were provided, and no one offered substantive suggestions for what the town could do to slow down the cars. A denial on its own may be reasonable. What is unreasonable is the lack of a systematic approach to our town's roads. There is no clear responsible party, no transparency on where things are. I understand Fairfield is a big town and we have a lot of competing priorities, but no one is explaining what those are and where my petition lands among them. It is unreasonable that the town's current way of dealing with traffic calming is reactive and not proactive. On September 20th, 2022, I sent an email to the Police Commission and, among other things, specifically stated their process was broken and asked for who is responsible for following up on my specific request. It went unanswered. Since then, it has been up to me to consistently and persistently follow up, which I did in multiple emails: September, October, November, December 2022, February, April, June, July 2023. Many of those went unanswered. Finally, part of my original petition, a crosswalk across Palmetto, across Mill Plain at Palmetto, was approved in July. It is not yet installed despite school starting a few weeks ago. I ask you to consider, does this make sense? Is this how it should work? I know my answer to those questions is no. As I stand here tonight, still nothing has been done to address speeding on Mill Plain Road or to slow cars down. I have repeatedly voiced through emails and public comment that this is simply unacceptable. Putting my own priority of Mill Plain aside, I've been watching the town take action on Reading Road after the horrible pedestrian fatality. Changes to Reading Road should absolutely occur, but what about Burr? What about Hulls Highway? What about Bronson? Is the town looking systematically at these similarly designed roads that have similar faults to Reading? To my knowledge, they are not, but shouldn't they be? No one else should have to die for action to occur. Just because something has been done a certain way for a period of time does not mean it is impervious to needing change. Fairfield desperately needs to change its approach to traffic calming and safety. There are so many towns in Connecticut that are taking action. Norwalk has a robust process and has made noticeable change. Westport, New Haven, Bridgeport, Wethersfield, many others. These towns are all prioritizing people over cars. There is no good reason Fairfield shouldn't be one of them. I believe our town could do better, needs to do better, and this ordinance is the first step to achieving that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up. For those of you who have written remarks, if you want to send an email with those to the RTM, and we can include it in the backup for this meeting. Thank you. Press the button, please.
There we go.
Oh, you got to hold it.
Good evening, members of the RTM. My name is Tom Corsillo. I live at 839 Churchill Road in North Stratfield. I'm here to urge you all in the strongest terms possible to say yes to the Safe and Livable Streets Ordinance. I think Churchill Road is a perfect example of why we so desperately need this ordinance. If you live in or around Stratfield, you know that it's one of the busiest streets in our part of town. And you can't really get in or around our neighborhood without traveling on Churchill. It's incredibly busy and well-traveled by both pedestrians and vehicles. And, you know, pedestrians are forced to share the road with vehicles with no protection. I'm dad of a first grader and a third grader, and every time we walk in our neighborhood, I feel like I'm putting their lives in danger, and I don't feel like it should be that way. So back in April, I wrote to the town engineer and requested that we put a sidewalk on Churchill. And the response I got was, one, we have about 40 neighborhoods that have requested sidewalks, and it costs a lot of money. And two, we need you to start a petition and demonstrate that there's support for a sidewalk. On point one, I feel like this ordinance would directly address that issue. I mean, it would create transparency that I think is badly needed. It would create a strategy with priorities and processes and goals and tactics, and it would create some accountability. On point two, regarding the petition, I think it's absurd that this town forces its residents to go out and petition to demonstrate that a sidewalk is needed. That should be the default position. We need to prioritize people over cars, and we very clearly are not doing that right now. And I just think that's ridiculous. But I did go in and start a petition nonetheless. And I mean, just in the last couple of months, 250 households just on Churchill and the immediately surrounding blocks have signed on to that. I think if you go up and down Churchill and the roads around it right now, you'll see signs that say slow down, drive slowly in Stratfield Village. I mean, I think that speaks to the appetite there is in this town for something to change and a recognition that the status quo is not working. And I don't think there is any shame in, you know, taking some time to reflect as a town on what we've done and admitting that it hasn't worked and, you know, saying, let's try something new. That, you know, learning from experience that's what wisdom is. So I think that's what we should be doing right now. I think this is a no-brainer. I think it's a common sense ordinance that should be passed with bipartisan support. So again, I urge you all to say yes to this.
Thank you. Guess my clock is working more like 3 minutes than 2. But you need to press the button on the mic there that says push. You got to hold it. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I'm Anya Mizak. I'm at 289 Brooklawn Terrace. And so Sarah Roy and I have started organizing bike buses for Stratfield Elementary School. That means we basically make it fun and safe for kids to bike to school. And the response has been amazing. The very first bus that we organized, so everyone's on the bikes like in the shape of a bus essentially. We had about 100 kids and families participate. I mean, the amount of fun that the kids and family had was so exciting. It was so inspiring. Immediately after that, kids asked, when can we do it again? Can we do it tomorrow? Can we do it next week? Answers was not anytime soon, because to make the bike buses safe for kids, just to get, you know, less than about a mile at most to their school, we needed to get, you know, 20 volunteers. We had a police escort. This is not something that we can safely do on a regular basis. And to me, that was like heartbreaking to see so many different people ask to ride their bikes to school, such a basic request, and not be able to do so safely. I've actually started biking with my daughter because I'm an avid cyclist and I really want to do this. And now I've started biking to school with my daughter every morning. But we're on the sidewalks. You know, it takes us as long to bike as it does to walk because the route is just not safe. I don't feel safe putting her on the street. And I want to change that. I want to make it possible for whoever wants to bike to school can. I don't think it's a big request. the other point I wanted to make. I also, some of you may have seen me around town. My brother has a similar bike as well. We have a cargo bike. We can put 2 kids in the back. Anytime I bike around, I get so many people telling me, how sweet it is, how fun it is. Some people ask me, where can I get a bike like that? And I'll tell them, I'll give them information, I'll share. They're like, oh man, that's amazing, but I just don't feel safe in Fairfield. I wish I could do what you're doing. Do you feel safe? And I want to say yes. I want to say I feel so safe. Please get on the road with me. And I don't, and I can't lie to people. I say I feel okay, and I'm willing to take the risk. I'm experienced enough to get out there, but they won't. And just the last couple points is. In full transparency, I've started doing political canvassing. I go to people's doors. I mentioned that I'm on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee as a way to be involved with the town. Almost every single, not almost, I think every single person I have actually mentioned that to will say, oh my God, you are? Here's how I want my street improved. Everybody across town wants this street to be safer. This is not just an issue of the few people who managed to sit here for 2 hours and get a chance to public comment. This is the town. People here care about this deeply. They engage in these conversations on a regular basis. They want this to be a safer town for people to walk and bike. I don't think we can sit there and say we can't change things overnight. Everything takes a long time. Just because it has been taking a long time is a reason to change our process and make it faster and make it feasible and make it the family-friendly town that we claim to be. We need the change, and we need it now.
Thank you, Anna. Next speaker. You got to hold it, unfortunately. Raise.
And just hold it down like that. Good evening. My name is Michelle Serlin. I'm a resident of 289 Puritan Avenue in the beach area. I've got 3 kids, ages 9, 13, and 15. I moved here with my family like 3 years ago. I moved to the beach area specifically because it was so walkable, and that attracted me here. I think that's what a lot of families are looking for. I feel so fortunate to live there. My kids walk and bike, they get around, they can go to their friends' houses, they can go to town. And yes, it can definitely be made safer in that neighborhood, but I'm here mostly to help advocate for other neighborhoods. I want that for all kids. All kids deserve that. All families deserve to be able to walk together safely. It's just something that's great for mental health, to get out, get away from the devices. We all know that's a huge problem. And this is a way to get people out, connecting with each other. That's a great thing that I find in my neighborhood. And I would hope that people in other neighborhoods could experience that too. So I know we've been focusing on fatalities, and of course we need to prevent those, but I want to focus on some of the positives that we're trying to build here for our families and what's going to attract families to this town. So I, strongly support anything that can be done to make the streets more walkable and bikeable, and hopefully it will become a bipartisan issue, even if it has to take longer. It's a very important issue that everybody should be working on together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Hi, Amy Barrett. I live at 306 Villa Avenue. And I was part of the group that Bill was mentioning 18 months ago. Actually, it'll be 2 years in October, I believe. Sorry, 1 year in October, that our improvements were finally approved. And that is why I'm here in support of this ordinance. As has been mentioned, it is simply codifying a policy that's already in existence, but is not implemented. I know recently at a police commission meeting, the chairman of the police commission said that he'd never heard of the complete streets policy. I know that that is not correct because I presented at least at 5 police commission meetings where that policy was brought up and the requirements of that policy were brought up. Even the police commission themselves are not familiar with these warrants. That's what they're called, the MUTCD. They're the warrants for traffic control. So while the police commission, I understand they are the LTA, the process is horribly flawed. As other people have said here, when we created our petition, it started because a car left the road going in excess of 80 miles an hour and ended up in my front yard at 7:30 on a Saturday morning. When I brought this up in our presentation at the police commission, the commissioner told me that's an anomaly. Well, between the time that happened and the time I presented, there were 4 more single car accidents in a 3-month period in a 2-block stretch of Villa Avenue where a car left the road and crossed the sidewalk. So I had to respectfully tell him it's not an anomaly, that's a pattern. But the process is flawed because it's fine for the resident, I believe, to identify the problem, right? It's our lived experience. We see it, right? But the process also requires us to come up with a solution, right? And that's what takes time, and that's the delay in this process. I am not an engineer. In fact, I was told as much because our petition for a stop sign was declined because it doesn't meet the MUTCD warrants. Well, I'd never even heard of that term before. If you go on the police commission site now, there is a link and there's a FAQs. Well, that is a direct result of our complaints about the process. So there have been some improvements, right? But it's not enough. It should be that the town is being innovative. They are looking outside the box for solutions. Villa Avenue is getting some unique solutions. And that is solely as a result of the support from RTM members in my district, as well as outside the district. Many people came and walked and were very supportive, members of the Bike and Ped Committee. And for the record, the improvements that are coming for Villa Avenue are already paid for by a grant. It's not costing the town any money to put these improvements in. So I just hope that everyone can support this ordinance, right? It's just codifying a policy that I think everyone says they're for safe streets until it becomes not car-centric. And I do have 2 children, 15 and 16, and I don't like them walking to Ward every day, but.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, anybody else? Okay. Don't see anybody else, so we're going to end that discussion for tonight. Item number 6, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting and which may be properly acted upon under the rules of the representative town meeting. I don't believe we have any. Tomorrow night is the Board of Finance quarterly review meeting. You may want to watch that for the ARPA update will be there, something that I had originally requested for this meeting. So, and other such, the budget obviously from last year and see where we stand. But can I make a motion to adjourn? Representative Galdenzi, seconded by Representative Sparacino. All those in favor? Aye. Good night. See you October 16th for committees.